My job today is really to talk a little bit about the act that's before the bill that's before Parliament, and to try and take you through some of its key provisions, looking at the possible implications for civil liberties in Singapore. Now, this act is called the Public Order Additional Temporary Measures Act, and just like its very long title, it's also a pretty long act. Okay, for intermediate measure, it is a very, very long act. Now, the idea was that this act this act will last for 12 months, and after which it will expire, and then hopefully, if the situation is not doesn't blow up again, then probably will not be brought back into operation. Okay. Now, the act itself, it's in a way a lawyer's dream and a politician's nightmare. A lawyer's dream because, well, as lawyers, lawyers are somewhat arrogant at times, and we always think that we can use the law to solve the world's problems. And unfortunately, life is not so simple, right? So quite often the law is a few steps behind reality and then tries to catch up. And this is a case of trying to catch up and kind of overtook everything else, and did more than what I think they planned. Can I have the next slide, please? Let's take a look at the zone. Now, in the Act itself, there are a couple of things that are quite crucial to our understanding of what they're trying to do. The first thing is they talk about special zone, right? And the special zone is this area which is it is not a very regular part of Little India, but this is more or less the zone. And it stretches all the way right up to Short Street, actually, okay, which is really right across the canal already, which most people wouldn't regard as really being part of that sort of Little India area. And then it goes as far up as Dorset Road, again, at the junction, and then up to BT Road, okay, and then of course Jalan Besar, which is we regard as being really part and parcel of the section. Now, so you have in this special zone, obviously, a mix of residents, businesses, a lot of businesses. You've got hotels, you've got hostels. So this is the special zone that they are talking about, okay. Now, the other thing that is defined within the Act itself is the word alcohol, because the word alcohol appears all over the place. And I think the underlying assumption of this whole Act is that alcohol was the cause of the riots, and therefore we have to target alcohol and the consumption of alcohol and the delivery and the sale of alcohol in some way. Right? This is basically what it is. Wow. Okay. Alcohol is defined as, I'm not sure I can do it with the feet of this thing. Alcohol is defined in the Act as 0.05% of ethanol or any other mix of ethanol and other substances. So you can see it's actually very, very low, right? So if you're looking at alcohol content, even in your beer and all that, I mean over 0.5%, this is very easy to breach, okay? And in fact, I think you will find that some of the provisions are really a little bit strange. But these are the two things to bear in mind: where the zone is, and secondly, the definition that's given to alcohol. Okay, next slide. Now the zone has, in the Act itself, is already defined, but can be redefined at any time. Right? This is one thing that we have to know. The minister is in fact given the power to either to shrink or to enlarge the zone. Right? And this is quite draconian in the sense that the rules that apply to the zone can be easily expanded outwards. Okay, and of course, the minister is not given an absolute discretion. That's the nice part about the Act. They actually tell the minister what are the things that he must look at before he decides whether or not to expand the zone or to shrink the zone. And what are these factors? Number one, incidents of any crime, whether or not related to alcohol consumption, which is very interesting. If it's not related to alcohol consumption, then why are they targeting alcohol in this particular way? Information about alcohol consumption in or near the area. Whether there has been any increase of whether the expansion or shrinkage will increase likelihood of or prejudices the prevention of or preparedness against any riot or other civil disturbance in the area. or prejudices the recovery by the community in the area from the riot. This second part here is actually quite interesting, right? They talk about recovery, sort of trying to kind of a healing, right? If the minister feels that, you know, anything that might jeopardize people from sort of recovering from the riot, that could be reason to expand the zone further even. Right? And finally, any other information which he considers relevant to the maintenance of public order in the special area. Okay, please. Now the zone itself, how big it is and so on, the minister must be satisfied, right, based on all this information that he got, whether or not the area is needed for the well-being of the communities in or near the additional area, and whether or not violence, regardless of whether or not alcohol is connected, has occurred in the area, and finally whether it is in the public interest to make the declaration. So now the only reason I'm bringing this out is because this is actually specified in the Act, which is very, very unusual. For those of you who know a little bit about administrative law, and you see Peter Loh here sitting here, is smiling because this is very unusual. Normally, the Singapore government or Parliament, when they give an act of this sort, will give the minister almost unfettered discretion, and the minister can then consider almost anything under the sun. But here, the Act actually tries to tell the minister, no, you can't look at everything. You must be satisfied that these things occur, which actually is quite good, because if you can be shown that the minister should not have been satisfied, then possibly, you know, some of the actions could be illegal. Next, please. Thank you. All right. So we've got the zone. We've got what the zone can be, what you can do or cannot do with the zone. Then what can you not do in the zone? Well, it's all about alcohol. Okay. It's about consuming alcohol in any public place in the special zone. Note it's on public place. So of course, if you live there, you consume alcohol at home, that's not counted, right? But any public space presumably would also include your restaurants, your hotels, lobbies, and so on, right? These would be considered to be public spaces. Well, secondly, selling alcohol and supplying alcohol. So there are three main crimes that are created, or main things which they are targeting. Number one, if you drink. Number two, if you sell to those who drink, presumably somebody buys it, will drink it. And the third is the ones who supply, meaning bringing stuff into the zone. Now that is, in fact, probably one of the most serious offences in the Act. Okay, and then what are your defences? Well, this one is actually very laughable. I couldn't understand the first defense, meaning if you seem to be using alcohol in some way, consuming alcohol, one defense, if it was necessary in an emergency and the need to preserve life or prevent injury. And I'm quite sure this is targeted at, you know, if your guy comes with a first aid kit and he's got ethanol and he's and you wouldn't be brought, you know, you wouldn't be considered as bringing ethanol into the special area and therefore committing an offense. It is that draconian, right? I mean, you bring isopropyl alcohol, you clean people's wound and all that. This would be, you know, probably one of the things that it's looking at. If it's part of a religious service, some way, right? If there's some kind of consumption of alcohol, but it must be by a person who has been approved by the commissioner. So not anybody under the sun. You must apply to be one of these guys who can conduct a ritual which might involve alcohol in this area. Okay. If you're a holder of a permit, now here there's a whole series of regulations about how you can apply for a permit, and then having got the permit, then of course you're exempt, right? And then finally, delivery to the permit holder. That means if the guy's got a permit, he's allowed to use alcohol or consume alcohol, and you are bringing it into the area for him, well, that kind of exempts you. Okay, next. Now, what are the permits? Well, the commissioner, now here is where it gets rather interesting. The commissioner, the police commissioner that is, or any authorized officer may grant permit to any individual authorizing him to consume alcohol or bring alcohol into the special zone. Nobody tells you, it doesn't tell you what is the reason this person is allowed to consume alcohol, right? But you can make an application and say, well, I want to consume alcohol, and you may be able to get a permit. Okay, very vague exactly how it's done. The commissioner, likewise, if he can issue one, can also cancel or suspend permit for breach of conditions, or if it's necessary or expedient to prevent or reduce the occurrence of violence. And the commissioner can also issue notifications, right, to exempt the following people. These are the exempted people: residents who live there and their guests. So their guests, if they consume alcohol, that's fine. Those who have a place of business in the special zone and their guests. Those who lawfully providing a service in the special zone plus their guests. And finally, for certain specified periods or occasions, this is not stated in the Act what these special occasions may be. Right? Again, very wide discretion. All right, so there are these offences. Okay, so what is the punishment, right? I mean, you create offences. What happens? Well, consumption of alcohol within the special zone. First offence, fine up to $1,000. Oh, sorry. Yeah. The second one, if you're a repeat offender, then fine between $1,000 and $2,000. Or up to 3 months jail, or both, right? So this repeat offender. So drinking alcohol consumption is actually the lowest of the crimes that are created. If you sell alcohol, right, the first offense up to 5,000 already. Okay, much higher threshold. Repeat offense, fine 5,000 to 10,000, and jail up to 3 months or both. Okay. And the last one, which is the most serious, if you bring alcohol from outside into the zone, straight away fine up to $20,000 or 12 months jail or both. Right? So this is considered the most serious of these offences. So as you can see, all these offences are looking at it from the perspective of alcohol. Alcohol in a zone, alcohol in the zone, right? Which kind of begs the question, exactly what you're trying to do with this particular piece of legislation. All right, maybe we can take a look at the next slide, please. Now, other powers that the police has. This is very scary. The police can inspect your personal property, can demand that you open your bag, take out your stuff, open everything, examine it, see if there's any alcohol. The police have the right to require you to remove one or more pieces of your garments to check if you are hiding alcohol on your body. The police can open any articles that you may possess for inspection to see if there's alcohol content there. May require officers, your vehicles to be open. They may remove articles from your vehicle, so if the guy really suspects, they may strip your whole vehicle and engine and all and see whether your petrol tank contains. Sure, have got some alcohol, right? All right. But again, the Act doesn't give them a totally free discretion on how to do it. They say, well, provided the police officer reasonably considers it necessary to make a request. Now, what does it mean by reasonably, right? Considers, right? You say it's judgment call. And what happens if you say no, right? No to strip search. Fine up to $2,500, jail up to 3 months, or both. Okay. Now, the police can also require you to have reasons for entry into the special zone. So, stop you and say, why are you coming in here? They can ask you. And if it's not satisfied, they can exclude you as well, refuse entry into the zone. Okay. And they have power to ban certain persons from entry into the zone. Right? So, they'll issue you an order. And if you get caught violating that order, then you commit an offence. They have the right of search and seizure, but must be done by at least an officer of a sergeant rank and above. Right? If they have reason to suspect that your property or something, you're housing alcohol or whatever it is, they can go in and search and seize whatever they have. They can close up the roads. Okay, they can arrest people who are in violation of the law. In the Act itself, there's a freeze on the current grant of liquor licenses. Okay, and the minister also has power to revoke liquor licenses. In addition to that, they have powers to destroy the alcohol that they find. Okay, so it becomes really quite tricky, right? Can you imagine you've got a friend staying temporarily at one of the hotels in Little India. You've decided that you're going to treat him to a vintage bottle of wine that you just brought in, and you get stopped. Police finds it. Power within the Act can destroy on the spot. takes your, I don't know, 1825 bottle of brandy or theoretically, okay? All right, next slide, please. Now, of course, looking at all these things, one of the first questions lawyers will ask, is this all constitutional? How can you do things like that? It's so draconian. Is it constitutional at all? Unfortunately, the answer is yes, it is. Right? It is because although we have generally Singaporean under the Constitution a right to freedom of movement, it is not an absolute right. These are all rights that are subject to exceptions. So in this case here, under Article 13, it says that subject to any law relating to security of Singapore or any part thereof, public order, public health, or punishment of offenders, every citizen of Singapore has the right to move freely throughout Singapore and to reside in any part thereof. So, first, Article 13 only applies to Singapore citizens. So if you're not a Singapore citizen, you can't even claim that right. Secondly, even for Singapore citizens, you will that right is subject to any law that may provide for public order, and it's very clear that this act itself is about public order, so it will pass muster at least at this level. How about the right to assemble? Right? Article 14(1)(b) talks about this, subject to clauses 2 and 3. Don't worry about 2 or 3. All citizens of Singapore have the right to assemble peaceably and without arms, but there are restrictions that may be imposed by Parliament if Parliament considers it necessary or expedient in the interest of the security of Singapore or any part thereof, or public order. And again, because it's a public order thing, this act will not be struck down as being unconstitutional. So let me just wrap up here with a few questions to be posed. Well, it's always interesting why legislators decide that they want to use law to solve a particular problem. There are a lot of life's problems that really are best solved not by the use of law itself, but in this particular case, they decided that it was one that they needed a new law, not just existing law, not a modification of laws that currently are in the statute books, but a brand new law. Why did they decide this? For some reason, there is a very clear, they have established, even before the Commission of Inquiry has completed its findings and is due to give the report, I think in May this year, the government has, or Parliament has decided that, well, alcohol is the cause, and we're gonna stem it out by controlling alcohol in the region, within that particular space. My question is, well, granted that there were the riots, granted the fact that you need to establish order and to ensure that it doesn't occur again, and that it's actually safe for people to still visit the place, why do we need to rush to put out such a draconian piece of legislation when we have not yet really established the causal links? It could be a multiple series of causes that led to the riots in Little India, but we seem to only be targeting this consumption, sale, and the bringing into the space of alcohol itself, right? So why the rush? I don't know. So I'm just asking the question, all right? The law. Don't we currently have existing laws that might be used or even modified? Now, we have got some very draconian laws, okay? If you look at them, they're quite scary. There's the Intoxicating Substances Act, right? Which is basically targeted at those people who sniff glue and all that. But it's quite easy with a little bit of amendment to change that act and allow that act to be used for a situation that you're worried that people are selling alcohol indiscriminately, or knowing full well that the person who's going to buy it is going to be totally drunk and go become violent, you still sell it to him. This is all covered under the Intoxicating Substances Act, but relates mainly to things like glue and benzene and stuff like that. Easily modified. The rules are already there. Your Miscellaneous Offences Act has got so many provisions: search, seizure, public order, causing public nuisance, disturbance, is all there. Why can't we make use of what's already there to deal with the problem, right? Now here is, the government is very fond of using this word, taking a prophylactic approach. We always take a preventive approach. And that's and so you end up taking up a MX missile to kill an ant. You end up overdoing the preventive measure. Yeah. So that's, I think, one of the big problems, right? That because you are in a way so kiasu about the whole story, you're just trying to make sure that things don't happen. You might end up targeting the wrong cause of it all. And the second thing is that you actually have existing framework. Why are you not using it? Public Order Preservation Act, right? Which is another one of public order. Now, one reason I suspect could be that they are afraid that it may be much too difficult to police the area. In other words, rather than wait until something is likely to go wrong and then to act, you just stop everything from happening that might go wrong from going wrong, so you don't have to act, right? It's a little bit like, I know A can't stand B, I put it in the same room, I know that somehow, sooner or later, they're going to start fighting with each other, but they might not, right? So one way is I stand here, I watch her. If it happens that I step in and I stop the fight, right? The other way is I put a fence in front and make sure that the two of them never see each other. So the approach that the Singapore government has taken is quite clearly that super preventive one. You just prevent things from happening. But the danger, of course, is that you end up targeting a wider range of people who may have absolutely no connection with any of the causal links that led to the riots in December. And finally, of course, what is the possibility of abuse? When you put in phrases like, if they think it's necessary, in the best interest of, and so on, well, the danger is it becomes very subjective to a large extent. So I'll leave you there and then pass the mic back to Prema. Thank you.
Thank you very much.